Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm Christine. I'm so happy to welcome my colleague here, my student, a member of our community. We have Kate Lumpkin is here with us. Kate is based in Wilmington, North Carolina, and she is an Ayurveda wellness coach specializing in women's health. Kate is here to talk about Ayurveda and IVF and her journey. She is currently nearing the end of her second pregnancy. And Kate and I have known each other for a year and a half or so now, and I feel like the journey that I've seen and kind of witnessed and seen you go through has been really powerful. And as we got on this call today, I really thanked Kate because I feel that this conversation, particularly with the wisdom that Kate has gained through her background in Ayurveda and her personal experiences, is a story that many will benefit from listening to. So I'm so grateful. Kate has been practicing and studying Ayurveda for a decade. She has a background in yoga. She's a postpartum doula, a mom, a business owner. Her business is called Soul Bloom Ayurveda. And she works one-on-one with clients to really understand their doshic, their constitution from an Ayurvedic perspective and support them individually to really reach their health goals. So with your background and your studies in postpartum care, it's just a beautiful set of offerings and support that you're bringing to the world. So Kate, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on the podcast.
Good, good. Well, we're so happy to have you. And I guess I'm just curious to just jump right into how you discovered Ayurveda. What was your entry point and when did this happen in your own health journey?
Yeah, so probably like many, I was introduced to Ayurveda when I took my yoga teacher training around 10 years ago. And I think when you're taking any type of training, there's certain modalities that stick out to you, and then there's others that, don't resonate as much. But when we came across the Ayurveda portion of our training, it was just like light bulbs went off. I thought it was so cool. I was learning about myself. I absolutely loved it. And so I started ordering every single book I could. And from then, it was just kind of self-study for several years. And then I became a mom around 3 years ago, and I was in the corporate business. I worked in tech, and postpartum, I went back to work for a couple of months. And I didn't love my job. And I said, if I'm going to miss raising my daughter, I'm going to do it for something that I love doing. And this is not it. So a couple of months postpartum, I quit my job and I decided to become a stay-at-home mother, which I'm so thankful for that decision. And when I was at home and kind of deciding what my next steps are, because I do have that pitta mentality of like, I always have to be doing something, I have to be evolving. A former yoga colleague actually was in the Ayurveda school that I was interested in. And she raved about it and absolutely loved it. So I said, why not? I'm just going to enter into a formal program. At that point, I did not want to be a health coach. I wasn't doing this for anyone other than myself. And so I entered the Ayurveda school, which is called Shakti School. Absolutely love it. And so now I'm in my second year. I'm going to be graduating to be an Ayurveda health counselor here in a couple of months. And it has completely changed my life just being in a formal program day in, day out for years. You're really in the material, you're in the knowledge. And so now I just have kind of shifted many areas of my life to be more aligned with Ayurveda. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I feel like Shakti school has a very, special emphasis on women's health. And, there's so much to the definition of health in Ayurveda, where we're really looking at our emotions, our mind, our spirit, our body, and how they all interact with one another, which I think is why so many of us, when we find in Ayurveda for the first time, we're like, whoa, yes, there's so much about it that just lands, because it is the study of life. It is the study of the human experience, and we're all in that. So yeah, I love that. And I also felt that, um, you know, postpartum time when my, first, because actually that's when I started Ayurveda
Isn't
studies.
it?
Well, is when my oldest was about 10 to 18 months old. I started a program, and for the next 3 years, that's what I did. That's so cool. I just didn't put that together until now. So I think, as you started nearing to the point in your life where you wanted um, to have a family, and this is before you were studying Ayurveda. Well, I guess you had, yeah, tell me about like this process from which you realized that you were ready to have children. Um, and take us back to that moment in time, and what was going on with your body, what was going on with you, and how did you enter into that place?
Yes, I mean, for me, I always knew I wanted to be a mom ever since I was little. It wasn't a question. It was just like you get married and then you have children. And that was always like so exciting for me. That was the reality that I wanted. I wanted children. And so I didn't think I would have any problems. It didn't even really cross my mind. But about a year into my marriage, we decided to start trying. And at that point, like, yes, I was studying Ayurveda, but I really wasn't incorporating the principles into my daily lifestyle. I was probably 29 then, 29, 30, and just kind of didn't really understand my cycles very well. I had some things going on. My husband also has some, male factor infertility things going on as well, but that's his story to share. But I do have a couple of things like not ovulating every single month. So that's a whole nother factor. Long cycles, very kind of like vata type of imbalances in my hormones. And at that point, I was not piecing it together. So it took us about 2 years to conceive with my daughter. And fortunately, at that point, we did not have to go through IUIs or IVF at that point. My husband and I were both on some medication to help us conceive, but we did not have to go into the full-blown fertility route yet. So when we actually got pregnant, even though we were obviously very much trying, it was still a little surprising because I thought I was going to have to go through IVF at that point. So we got pregnant, and it was a very healthy pregnancy, a very great pregnancy. And she is now a little bit over 3. And I knew I wanted a second child. I've always wanted to have 2 kids. And so people will tell you your body knows what to do on the second time around. Unfortunately for me, that was not the case. I believe that. So around when she was 10 months, I wanted to start trying again because we were, a little bit afraid of what if it takes us a while. And again, I probably still didn't fully understand my cycles and everything going on. But I always had this vision that at her second birthday party, I was going to be pregnant. And then her second birthday party rolled around and I was not. And so it was apparent that late 2023, early 2024, that we were going to need to seek fertility help. And so we tried to, go back on the medication. That didn't work. I went through a couple of rounds of IUI, which is insemination. That didn't work. And it just, it became apparent that I was going to have to go through IVF. And to be quite honest, it was one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make for myself. And it came with a lot of emotion and it was extremely difficult. But I also knew that that was going to have to be the path I was going to take. And I was unwilling to, see if we would get pregnant because we may not. So I wanted the assistance. And so we decided to jump into IVF.
It's so beautiful to listen to you talk because I think that, you just you knew what was right for you and what you wanted to do. And I think what is so important for all of us as we're navigating, you know, all the health events that happen in our lives, honestly, everything that we want to happen in our lives, it's like connecting that inner knowing with the support systems that we have around us. So as you were making this decision um, to move forward with fertility support, how are you now bringing in your Ayurvedic background, which is a skill set that you didn't have as developed as you do now
Mhm.
with your daughter?
Yeah. Because I was in school, so at this point when I started the IVF process, I had actually graduated as a health counselor or a health coach. And so I was taking on clients, I was doing webinars, etc. And so I knew a lot about my body, but at the same time felt a lot of shame around having to do IVF, being this holistic coach, being an Ayurveda practitioner. And so I was trying to, they always say in Ayurveda, be your own first client. And so I was very much entering this into how can I assess myself essentially on a daily basis as to what I need for this to be extremely successful. And I'd already at that point for over a year been living pretty much more Ayurvedically to where it feels good for me. I'm definitely not an Ayurveda fundamentalist. I, like to have my modern things. I don't always eat Ayurvedically. I enjoy my cheeseburgers from time to time, but I wanted to make sure that I was assessing myself on a daily basis to see how can I support myself through this very masculine process? How can I bring in that feminine part of conception to something that feels very regimented and almost like you don't have control over your own body. And so I wanted to not have a sense of control over the situation, but how can I help this process as much as possible? Because if you're going through IVF, you know that it's not a guarantee. It's not a guaranteed success outcome of a pregnancy. So I wanted to give myself the best shot as possible. So on a daily basis, it was looking at my elimination. It was looking at the ama on my tongue. It was assessing my nervous system to see, okay, what do I need to eat? How do I need to relax today? How do I want to move my body? What herbs do I want to take? And bringing in all of that Ayurvedic knowledge that I had to make sure that I was being my own client and helping myself as much as possible.
I love that so much about Ayurveda, and it wasn't until studying it that I really saw the foundation as being that daily routine, that like daily checking in, that daily, you know, in Ayurveda we call it dinacharya. It's that daily routine. If it's what you do on a daily basis that makes up how healthy you feel as a whole. So, um, and what is so great about that like rhythm of checking in is that in itself is very grounding.
Yeah.
That in itself gives us something to do. I think sometimes when we go to places where we feel anxious or disconnected, it's because we feel a little helpless, like we don't have that control that helps to make us feel safe. But we
Mhm.
know that we have these rhythms that we can create for ourselves that allow us to really be connected with what's going on in all of our tissues and all of our, how are we digesting our food? How is that showing up on my tongue? That ama you mentioned is like undigested material that'll show up like a white coating on our tongue. So scraping the tongue, paying attention. Oh, yeah, I'm a little constipated. I need to like bring in some more liquids, some more oils. Um, it's very empowering to know
Yes.
that what we do has an impact to how we feel versus this understanding that we sort of adopt from our modern culture is, well, hopefully we won't get sick, or hopefully, nothing bad will happen. And when it does, I need somebody else to fix me because I don't know how to do those things. So I love how you talked about it as bringing in the feminine through this very masculine process, because I hadn't thought about it that way, but you're so right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's extremely masculine. And to your point, like in the sense of control, it's you almost like give over your body during this process. It's very invasive. It's, vaginal ultrasounds multiple times a month. It's egg retrievals, which is very invasive process. It's the transfer. It's, giving yourself meds. It's a very invasive, but also very masculine process. And it has to be, it's science, right? And I'm thankful for it because it's been proven to work. It has, the clinic I went to had very great success rates. And, this is when you're going to come in for your appointments. This is when you're going to have your retrieval. This is what we need your labs to look like in order to do said um, uh, transfer or retrieval. This is, you can't have any cysts. It has to be this like picture perfect process almost. This is exactly how many meds you're going to take and what time of day you're going to inject yourself. And so it's just very regimented and very masculine. And if you think about conception, it's very feminine. It's energy coming together. It's this, in a natural way, it's two people coming together and making this life. And IVF is missing that. It's, your embryo is made in a lab. And I'm so thankful for it because I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today without this very masculine process. But when I was going through it, I knew I had to bring in that feminine. I knew I had to bring in working with my herbs and cooking my food and meditating and visualizing as much as I could, because that would balance that masculinity. And in Ayurveda, it's all about the balance. And so I couldn't control my lab work. I couldn't control how many eggs they were going to retrieve. I could not control if the transfer worked, but I could control the holistic side of my lifestyle and what I was putting into my body and what I was thinking and how I was waking up and how much sleep I was getting. So it is finding that balance, which in Ayurveda is all we're trying to do, is balance ourselves.
did you feel, was there a point, did you go into the IVF process kind of with that plan, or did you kind of realize how much you needed that plan while you were in it as a response from going through it?
That's a really good question. Probably both, because I was already dealing with the fertility stuff of the IUIs, and I was already getting checkups and working with a fertility doctor for probably 6 months before I decided to do IVF. So it's already incorporating Ayurveda. I think I kind of amped it up when through IVF, every woman, is coming to IVF for a different reason. There are so many reasons that we may have to go through IVF. It could be male factor, it could be us, it could be something to do with our egg count. There's so many reasons, hormones, etc. And so you're given a protocol that's very specific to you. And I knew, and I was looking at this protocol and just kind of like, okay, so this is when they're trying to build my estrogen. This is when the transfer is going to happen. This is when I need to really be able to support my liver and my womb in order to have a successful transfer. That's when the light bulbs kind of went off for me, is like, I'm going to be doing different things based on where I'm at in my protocol. So I'm going to be taking different herbs for my egg retrieval than I'm going to be taking for my transfer. etc. And so that was really the fun part of it, was just trying out new things based upon where I was at in my overall protocol, which was about 3 months.
Mm, that is so cool. And I have to say, as an interlude, that Kate is going to be coming into our community to do a workshop on this, and we're going to be really looking at, how we can assess the different stages that we are. If we are moving through a fertility journey, IVF, like what are the ways that we can actually support and look at our own body? And of course, there's no one protocol. That's the difference between this way and this, more natural and feminine way, because it really comes back to the individual and what our body is telling us. And so that opening up those lines of communication is so vital. Um, and I can see how approaching any type of very intense Western medical process with, the support of this um, feminine foundation, that sort of marriage of the two processes is so beautiful and so important. And I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Yeah, and I think it is, as we all know, IVF is very individualized, but also Ayurveda is. And so, for example, I did IVF over summer. I'm a Vata Pitta. I took all of that into consideration, the season, my dosha, my imbalances, my time of life. I have a toddler. I took all of that into account when going through the IVF process. And so someone who is very Kaphic in the winter, it's going to be very different for them than it would be for me. And so it's just looking at the holistic approach of the individual and what they need from both the Western medicine and the Eastern. And it's really, really fun. Yeah, it makes you feel more empowered to be able to take back some of that control.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so now you are going to be entering into your second postpartum window, but this time you have so much more in your awareness and in your toolkit to do this. How are you feeling about moving into your second
I
postpartum window?
am so excited. So my first postpartum period, I actually felt like I knew a good amount in terms of slow down, be present, read books instead of scrolling when the child is breastfeeding. So I felt like I had a pretty good foundation. But ever since coming into the sacred window studies and really diving into postpartum dualism, I'm so excited for this next go around, because not only being able to take clients and to do it firsthand for other people, I get to I'm going to do a little bit for myself, and I'm also going to try to hire out because I do understand the importance of having the support. But I'm excited to be able to nourish myself in different ways than I did not my first. My first, I was sitting there, eating my dry crackers and my sandwiches and whatever I could get my hands on, and not understanding why, my breast milk wasn't ample. And this time around, I just have so much more empowerment into the nourishment that I take in, the herbs that I'm going to make for myself on a daily basis to help with breast milk production. The just being able to do my abhyanga with my baby. I do that with my 3-year-old right now. We lay out our mat, we warm up our oil, and we put all over our bodies. And I'm so excited to now be able to do this with my newborn, because I didn't do that the first time. So I just feel like I have so much more knowledge on how to support myself postpartum, and how to ask for help. Because the first time around too, I really wasn't asking for help. A, because I didn't feel like I needed it, but B, I didn't want to put people out. But this time I understand that people want to help. And so I'm excited to be able to give others the tools of, like, this is what I'm hoping for. This is what I'm looking for. Can you help me with this? And so I just feel like I have so much more knowledge on how to be grounded, how to appreciate the time, and knowing that it goes by so fast. And I'm just really looking forward to having this child watching my 3-year-old become a sister, growing our family. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Mm. I'm so excited for you. What do you feel like has been a really powerful thing that you've learned through? I know this journey has been really difficult at many points throughout. How do you feel like you've grown as a person through going through that?
That's a very good question. A lot. Um, I will say, and when I say this, I don't want to project the emotions I felt on anybody else, because when you're going through a very difficult time in your life, we all deal with grief differently. And for me, I felt a lot of shame around the fact that I'm a holistic Ayurveda coach and I have to go through IVF. I felt so much shame around that. Shame that if you understand Ayurveda, your reproductive dhatu, your shukra dhatu is the last one. And so if your other dhatus are not nourished, your reproductive dhatu isn't either. And so I'm like, what am I doing wrong? There was so much blame, a lot of blame on myself, a lot of blame on my partner. And I felt a lot of grief around having to go through IVF. I'll never forget the weekend, because I couldn't even wrap my head around having to go through IVF. Like, I wouldn't even talk to my fertility doctor about the process until like I made the decision to do it. And I'll never forget the weekend I told myself, if I get my period this month, it was last May, I will go through IVF. And on that Saturday, I got my period. And I let myself cry for 3 days. Cry, grieve, feel the shame, feel the disappointment. Most women, I would say 99% of women, do not want to go through IVF. It's our last chance. And so it's our last option. And so I allowed myself to feel it. And then throughout the process, I kind of put my head down and did what I had to do to get through it. And I kind of stuffed all of those emotions down. I really repressed a lot. And being on the other side, 31 weeks with a very healthy pregnancy, and I successfully had my first transfer was successful, which I'm so grateful for. I'm now starting to deal with the emotions or feel the emotions and kind of noticing the silver linings and feeling the gratitude, which is really hard to feel when you're in that IVF process. It's really hard to understand the silver linings when you're still not pregnant. And I've realized that I do carry a lot of shame and self-loathing at times. And that comes from childhood stuff. But it's things that now working with a somatic therapist is dealing with that emotion and sitting with it and being open and warm to it. But I'm also, noticing how strong and resilient I am. The fact that any woman on a fertility journey is incredibly strong, an incredibly strong human being. And anyone going through IVF is incredibly brave. It's a very hard process. And so, just going through it myself and kind of putting my head down and getting through it, it's so hard, you're giving yourself these meds every day. But I realized how brave I am and how strong and how capable and how resilient and how much I want to be a mother and how important that is to me. And so I'm noticing kind of, overcoming the shame and the grief with the gratitude that I'm here, the gratitude for Western medicine, the gratitude for doctors and science, gratitude for Ayurveda and holistic wellness, but also just being able to share my experience because, a lot of people do feel shame and grief around having to go through IVF and don't want to talk about it. And especially those of us who are more like holistic and crunchy because we feel like we shouldn't have to. We feel like we should be doing all the right things and that we should be healthy. But the reality is that sometimes we need help, and it's okay. And you're not wrong, and you're not broken, and you're not less than because you have to seek assistance. You're brave and you're powerful and you're determined. And so being able to kind of share this very candid story with people has allowed me to make a lot of connection and also empower women, through my business Soul Bloom and sharing some of my story on Instagram. I have so many women coming to me that necessarily aren't even in Ayurveda or who understand it, but now want to understand more about it. And so I'm hoping that by sharing my story, it's empowering people that just because you're a holistic practitioner, just because you're into holistic wellness, does not mean that you are less than if you have to go seek assistance to get pregnant, if you have to go through IVF. It doesn't make it any easier, but you are not less than.
It's so, so beautiful. And I can just see how what you've experienced and how you've shifted is the greatest gift for the people who get to work with you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to having you come back and do this longer workshop with us.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We're going to talk about herbs. We're going to talk about different Ayurveda protocols for where you're at in your IVF journey, and emotions that go around with it. And I'm really excited. It's been a long time coming to share my story, and I appreciate the platform to do so.
It's truly an honor to host you here. And I will say, for those of you who are listening to this that may be a little farther into the future, members of our community, our student community, our alumni community have access to our full archive of classes and workshops. So you will not be missing Kate and the wisdom that she will be sharing. And as I said a little bit earlier, we have some additional conversations and classes that have really been coming into our sphere around preconception, IVF, fertility. This is a topic that's really being called to explore. And we are so happy to be a platform with which we can learn from one another and really understand how to be the most supportive to ourselves and our clients and our loved ones. So,
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to share, especially on this platform that is for everyone, is when I walked through, and I've talked to you about this, is when you go into a fertility clinic, everyone's heads are down. And being an empath, I feel a lot of energy, and I could feel everyone's sadness for having to be there. We don't want to be in this fertility clinic. We want to be out there getting, pregnant on our first try, but we're here. And everyone's heads are kind of down, not looking at each other. And all I wanted to do was be able to catch another woman's eye and give her a smile, because I want her to know how brave and beautiful and bold and how much hope I hope that she has. That you can take back a lot of your power during this process. You don't have to just give it over. So if you are on the journey, whether that is you're struggling with fertility, or you have in the past, or you're considering IVF, or you're resisting it, once you're on the other side and you have that baby in your arms, you'll start to understand why this was your path. But I think that's one of the biggest things about fertility is allowing yourself to slow down to be able to know why your body is communicating to you what's going on to have some of these symptoms. And that's where you take the empowerment back, is how can I slow down? What do I need to work on? What are the energies in my body? Where are the blockages? And it's not your fault. It's just being able to take a step back and notice. And I wish you the best. And yeah, I would love to chat if you ever need anyone to talk to about it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really beautiful. And I will make sure that all of your contact information and more about the work that you are doing is in our show notes. Um, we'll talk to you soon, and thank you so much.
Thank you. So good to talk to you.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.